Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Monday, November 16th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast, Vaccine Monday. Vaccine Monday. I am spotting a trend here, people. Hopefully you're starting to spot the trend as well. Now, we always knew there was always these BS headlines coming out, whether it was for a vaccine, for therapeutics, for the U.S.-China trade talks, anything. Anything that the administration could throw out there, anything that Congress could throw out there, the stimulus, quote-unquote stimulus, round 2 of the Nobody Cares Act, Nobody Cares Act Jr., I guess. They've been pulling our string on that one for several months as well. And, of course, they're going to use a lot of the economic data that's been coming out to say, oh, well, I guess we don't really need a Nobody Cares Act Jr. Don't need it. Stock market's at all-time highs. Bureau of Labor Statistics tells us that the unemployment headline is at 6.9%. The Department of Labor, with initial jobless claims, tells us, well, that it was about 700,000 people filed first-time claims last week. So not a big deal anymore. Because it used to be 800,000, used to be 850, used to be 900,000. Things are getting better, so why do we need to pass more stimulus? Of course, I'm against it, but this is just the argument you have to understand. Our last podcast last week, the myth of economic recovery, well, this is coming to fruition here, is the point I'm making. There is no economic recovery. And by the time these idiots pass something for people, it's going to be too late for a lot of them, especially a lot of small businesses, especially with this surge in new COVID-19 cases across the country. Several governors are now issuing stay-at-home orders, shutting down restaurants again, whole 9 yards, here we go. It's going to completely put people out of business if they weren't out of business already. But of course, the big stores will stay open. The Walmarts and the Targets and the Costcos and the Home Depots and the Lowe's of the world, they'll stay open, of course. But if you're a small business and you offer the same goods, sell the same stuff, nope, you're going to get shut down. You're not going to make it. Not going to make it. But Vaccine Monday, here we go. Last week, it was on Monday. That's what I'm saying. I think we're spotting a trend. We already knew the trend was here for BS headlines. I mean, that's been evident for the past 2-3 years. But are they just going to start picking Mondays now? Is that what it's going to be? I mean, are they just saying, well, what the heck? There was the weekend. Let's throw out something. Last week it was Pfizer at 90% effective. And then we later found out that the CEO of Pfizer, after that announcement, sold his stock. Now, I think that might have been announced, that was going to take place, his share sell. But boy, it doesn't hurt to put out a positive vaccine on that day, doesn't it? Maybe he pocketed an extra 500,000, an extra million, extra 2 million. Have to go and do the math. But I'm sure on that stock pop, I bet it didn't hurt him. But you have to ask yourself, if the vaccine is going to be so successful, why would he cash out $5-6 million? Why wouldn't he hang on just a little bit longer? Another phase worth of studies, of trials, the granting of emergency use authorization, and then the implementation of said vaccine. Why wouldn't he wait? Same question we have to ask that of Moderna, because that was the headline today. And of course, this one is supposedly better than Pfizer's. So maybe the Pfizer CEO knew that Moderna's was going to be better. I don't know what's going on. But this one is 94.5% effective, according to their press release from Moderna. 94.5%. Look how precise they're getting with us now. They must have pulled out the micrometer to measure this. That's precise. 94.5%. Not 94 and a quarter. Not 94. Not 95. Not 94 and 2/3. Not 94 and 1/32. 94 and a half. Right on the nose, evidently. Boy, do they take us for idiots. And they did this earlier in the year, too. But of course, there's so much stuff going on, it's easy to forget. They're just recycling all of this crap, ladies and gentlemen. Last week it was Pfizer, this week it's Moderna. Let's see who comes up next week. Maybe even later this week. AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, GSK, somebody out of the woodwork we've never heard before. Who knows? Come out anywhere. Merck. Just name them. One after the next. They're just recycling us. Just to juice these markets. That's all it is. On hopes. Now, the stock market, because when we get to market performance, the bond market, I guess they're not buying it. Market just isn't buying it with the bond market. Now, Moderna, earlier this year, when we had one of these BS headlines, of course, the stock popped, and the executives sold the stock. Same question. If you have so much confidence in your product, in your vaccine, that is going to solve a global pandemic, meaning hundreds of millions, if not billions of people are going to take your product, why would you sell your shares? We know how extremely greedy these people are. Why would they take the money and run? Just a simple question to ask. Maybe they know something we don't know. So, it's Vaccine Monday. Let's see what happens next Monday. But I think we're spotting a trend here. Very interesting. And of course, this moved the markets, the stock market, hitting all-time highs. Big rallies across the board around the world. Indian markets hitting an all-time high. Again, Japanese markets back to 1991 levels. Took them a long time to get back to that, and they got a long way to go to get to their all-time high back in 1989, early 1990. Can't remember the date. But they still got a long way to go to get there. And we still, I'm sure many of you have seen this today too, on the nightly news. The massive food bank lines they were showing the state of Texas. We're a couple weeks away here from Thanksgiving? And we still have this many Americans going to food banks. At the same time, the stock market is hitting all-time highs. You understand why I say this is a first world banana republic? You understand why I say this is a moral decline and decay? Political decline? Economic decline? You get it? Starting to paint the picture with me here? People in food bank lines, tens of millions of people who still can't feed themselves in this country, and a stock market that's hitting all-time highs. We still have 21 million people collecting some form of unemployment, and a lot of that's nickels and dimes, believe me. A lot of that is it's running out. It's running out, and that's all these people are getting. Some people still have yet to receive any type of unemployment insurance benefit. Several months into this. Because we're broke. The states are broke. They don't have it. Federal government doesn't have it either, but they got a printing press. Oh, don't we? Oh, yeah, that's part of the Banana Republic here. Turn that sucker on, and they're going to. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Because, who is it there? Rip Van Winkle, our Secretary of Commerce there, he woke up from his long nap, Wilbur Ross, and what did he have to tell us today? Oh, yes. The deficit for next year is going to be, $3.5 trillion. We can round amongst ourselves here. We're friends. $500 billion, give or take. Who cares? And of course, if that's what he's projecting, it's going to be even worse. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That was like the CBO this year saying, well, it's probably going to be, the real budget deficit might get to close to $4 trillion. We said, there's no question then it's going to hit $4 trillion. And it's going to go over it. Yeah, and it did. We're about 4.2, 4.3. We're getting there. $27 trillion national deficit. or national debt. So another three and a half to add on to next year. That means we're going to be at $31 trillion national debt next year. Just phenomenal. And I've stated this many times before. Those of you who may be tired of hearing me say I have 27 trillion pieces of evidence in my corner. What do you got? Like I said, don't worry, because it's going to be 28 trillion, 29, but before we know it, it's going to be 30, 31 trillion. Because 2021 is right around the corner. Who cares? Evidently nobody. Again, that's why it's called the Nobody Cares Act. And now they're trying to, once again, push through the HEROES Act. You got President-elect Joe Biden up there saying, well, we should pass the HEROES Act. Well, you got to pass it because you're going to be an anti-hero. If you don't, you're going to be against heroes if you don't pass it. That's how it works. You have to pass the Patriot Act, one of the most unpatriotic bills ever passed in this country. Because if you don't pass it, then you're unpatriotic. See how stupid they take you for? That's why they come up with these names. Oh, it's the CARES Act. Oh, you care, don't you? You care, yes, you care. You don't want to be somebody who doesn't. So you got to pass it. And what happened? They did. 96-0, no votes for America. Don't you ever forget it. 96-0. And another one was 100-0. And they're going to continue to kick the can down the road. They're going to continue to spend money they don't have. They're going to continue to print it into existence, fueling a frenzy in the stock market, creating bigger bubbles across the spectrum, devaluing your currency, your money, your hard-earned dollars, devaluing them by the second, and nobody cares. Because as long as you can get maybe $1,200 or maybe an extra $600 if you're unemployed per week, well, that's your sit down and shut up money. That's all it is. Nobody cares as long as they're getting paid. That's all it is. It's all it ever comes down to. If we can change a law, how can we get away with this? It's what the government says to themselves and all their cronies. How can we get away with this? Oh, well, we got to pay some people off. Because they know how they operate. And so that's how they think. Well, I know what I would do, they say. Well, if I got paid off, I would do this. I would look the other way. Well, maybe if we pay the people off, they'll stop looking. They'll look the other way. They'll stop paying attention. They won't get aggravated or frustrated. They won't take to the streets. They'll just look the other way because they got paid. Just a little bit. $1,200 here. Maybe more if you're married, have a couple kids. Unemployed, get an extra $600. Hey, I'm making even more not working. What a great gig I got going here. See what's going on? Right in front of us. That's what they want. That's what they're going to continue to do. And now they're locking us down again. We saw this coming from a mile away. They are just decimating this economy. Everything is going, it's just going to be a tragedy. Heartbreaking. It already is on a number of fronts. Suicide rates are already up. Alcoholism, drug abuse, up. It's going to go up more. Crime, domestic abuse, all going to go up. Theft, people are going to be desperate. That's what this is coming down to. It's coming down to desperation, and there is no leadership from anybody. Not from Thunder Thumbs, not from Sleepy Joe, not from the idiots in Congress. Nowhere. And not from any other country around the world either. You see the people taking to the streets in Europe after their tough lockdown restrictions again. They're fed up. They're desperate. And yes, of course, there's the pandemic too, and we got the holiday season coming up. So is this thing going to get even worse? Quite possibly if people continue to travel. Quite possibly. Something to look out for. Here's some market performance and some other news. We have the RBA, the Reserve Bank of Australia. They're ready to roll out further stimulus, of course. Who's surprised by this? This is according to their November meeting minutes. Reserve Bank of Australia is ready to roll out further stimulus. I thought everything was great. I thought Australia locked down the virus. I thought they're good to go. I thought their neighboring country, New Zealand, I thought they had it locked down. They're good to go. You don't hear too much out of China anymore. They must be good to go too. We got a vaccine coming up. One's 90% effective and the other one's 94.5% effective. Why does Australia need more stimulus? Why do we need it? Everything's great. Stock market at all-time highs. Unemployment 6.9%. So they tell us. No inflation. Everything's booming. Why so many people in a food bank line then? Dollar index trading at 92.5. 92.5 on the dollar index, creeping a little bit lower. It's going to be interesting to watch to see if this level holds. Of course, we did break through the 92 handle not too long ago. But if it busts through 92, goes down 91, and busts through 91, then we got a problem here. But we're going to watch this closely as we have been. Indexes, like we said earlier, across the board, all higher off of this BS baloney news, 94.5% effectiveness from Moderna. Okay, overnight futures trading, Dow Jones Industrial Average is down about 0.33%, same for the S&P 500. NASDAQ 100 is slightly in the green, but only up about 0.1%. Japanese cash trade is currently up 0.4%. A sea of green across the pond in Europe. UK markets gaining about 1 2/3%. German markets gaining 0.5%. The French market's up 1.7%. Italian markets gaining 2%, and the Spanish market's up 2.6%. Of course, they are still well off of their all-time highs. Australian cash trade is currently trading up about 0.2%. Now, some late breaking news. Tesla, quite possibly here, is going to be added to the S&P 500. We talked about this maybe 2 months ago or so, give or take, because this was a conversation and the decision was rendered that Tesla was not going to be added to the S&P 500 then. But I guess for some reason it is now back to these decision makers, and they, I guess, are deciding to add Tesla to the S&P 500, which to me, again, is just ridiculous, as I stated a couple months ago. But I said then, at least, that was the right decision, that they did not allow Tesla into the S&P 500. And the reason being is because Tesla is not profitable. It just doesn't make sense. How do you square that circle? When you're on there with the largest companies in the world, but they're also profitable. Tesla is not profitable. But for the sake of government subsidies and tax credits and all these other shenanigans, Tesla wouldn't be able to show a profit on paper. But that's all it is. That's all it is. It's a joke. Yet here they are. So we'll see what this does. Because now, obviously, S&P 500, you got a lot of index funds that obviously are mirrored the S&P 500. So is this just going to be a lot of automatic buying into Tesla? Or is this going to be some sort of sign of a top? Because if there's ever going to be a poster child for this insanity, it's going to be Tesla. Their stock price, it's just, they are going to be the poster child or one of them. Top 5. No doubt about it in my mind. Because there are a lot of bubbles out there. There's a lot of insanity going on across the board. But Tesla is going to be up there front and center when this house of cards comes tumbling down. So just so you're aware, Tesla's most likely getting added to the S&P 500. Unbelievable. On the commodity front, we have WTI trading at $41.61 a barrel, so again, north of $40. Brent also north of 40 at $44.16. Natural gas getting shellacked today, below $3, now at $2.69. Despite this news of the vaccine Monday, gold and silver, of course, they did sell off initially off of the news, but they sort of held their own, which to me is encouraging. Because last week they got shellacked when it was Pfizer, and that was 90% effective. This one's 94.5%. Don't forget. I'm going to say it again, 94.5%, because I'm just amazed at the level of precision here at 94.5%. But gold holding its own right now, $1,888 an ounce. Silver also holding its own at $24.74 an ounce. On the bond front, again, they're not buying it. They are not buying this headline noise. Uncle Sam's 10-year junk note is yielding 0.91%, so still with this 9 handle. Well, that shouldn't be the case. Should be higher, should be much, much higher than this. should be rallying. These yields should be rallying. Should be a massive sell-off in the bond market, pushing those prices down, popping those yields higher. Because this is it. This is the cure. This is the vaccine that's going to solve everybody's problems. No, they're not buying it. Nope, not buying it. Should have been a lot more than this. It's not. Now, of course, tomorrow's another day. But the headline came out today. Why not a bigger rally? Something to ask yourself, folks. And again, the bond market is in a big bubble, too. You know, a lot of people out there say the bond market is the truth or that's the better barometer, and I still agree with that. But the bond market's busted, too. Because of quantitative easing, all of the shenanigans with the central bank, federal government, it's busted, too. It's not a real market either. What else did I want to talk about here today? Oh, yeah. Yes. Treasury secretaries, right? You know, you got President-elect Biden. You know, he's got to start filling in the cabinet. We talked about Treasury secretaries before. There was a name out there from the Federal Reserve, Lael Brainerd, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Lael, I believe. Governor on the Federal Reserve Board. She's been there for a while. Her name, I believe, was in the ring. Now you hear former Federal Reserve Chairman Janet Yellen. Yes, good. Two more idiots from the Federal Reserve who might be top dog at our Treasury Department. Talk about a revolving door. Talk about the swamp alive and well. I told you there was no drainage of the swamp. None. And another guy who's on the list now, I don't know how serious this is going to be, but he's on the list, and he's been talked about before, is the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. D-I-M-O-N. Jamie Dimon. He is, I believe, the only CEO remaining on Wall Street at one of these major banks. Again, still there from the great financial crisis. Everybody else got fired, had to resign in shame. Of course, they got their golden parachutes, courtesy of the U.S. taxpayer, of course. Or they went bankrupt. They went out of business. Jamie Dimon's the only man left standing. So that tells you something. That tells you that he's an operator. You got to give credit where credit's due. Like I said, I don't like Mitch McConnell. I don't like Chuck Schumer. I don't like Nancy Pelosi. But you got to give credit where credit's due. They got to those positions because they know how to maneuver. They know how to operate. Same thing here for Mr. Jamie Dimon. He knows how to operate because he's the last man standing. And of course, the news media loves to put up this image. He's the darling of Wall Street. He can do no wrong. He's super smart, knows how to do everything. Bunch of junk, bunch of crap. He got bailed out. We bailed him out. His company bought Bear Stearns. Of course, that was with our assistance, taxpayer assistance. No problem. No problem. And we were talking about that last week because I really didn't want to focus on too much news last week because I'm just getting sick and tired of it, to be perfectly honest with you. That's why we talked about the state of our union, an embarrassment, a disgrace. Talked about bailout nation, which was in regards to the great financial crisis and how no new lesson has been learned from that. It's just a continuation of that nonsense, of quantitative easing, of extremely low interest rates, kicking the can down the road, nobody taking any responsibility or accountability, and continuing to bail out major corporations globally, not just American corporations, global corporations buying their debt, and God knows what else from the things that we're not allowed to see or know about. So we got a nice revolving door going on down there in Washington, D.C., and this isn't just unique to the Treasury Department, but clearly I'm focused on the financial health and the fiscal health of this country. That's what really gets me going. When you get upset about having to wear a mask, that's perfectly fine. I don't like wearing them either. But you're in a pandemic, okay. Not the hill I want to die on. Our fiscal health, that's something different. Getting rid of the federal income tax, oh yeah. Getting rid of the Federal Reserve, oh yeah. That's something different. To me, that makes a difference. that means something. That, to me, is structural. Wearing a mask, not wearing a mask during a pandemic is not a structural issue to me. Okay? I know it's very easy to understand it because it's right in front of you. But to me, just how easy it is for you to see somebody wearing a mask, that's how easily I see what's going on with these idiots in the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department and the rest of our government. That's what I'm saying. It's right in front of you. You just got to pay attention. They tell you. They tell us all the time. I don't have the tea leaves. I'm not going in some wigwam or teepee and getting high off of LSD or something so I can see the future. They tell you. They tell us all the time. It's in the meeting minutes. It's in an interview on 60 Minutes. It's on an interview in a 5-minute interview on CNBC or Bloomberg, Fox Business. You just have to pay attention. It's in a testimony on Capitol Hill. It's in a memo draft. It's in a press release. It's right in front of you. It's in the stock market. It's with these headlines that they come out with. Take us for idiots every single day. That's what matters. That's structural. Pay attention to those big ticket items. So, you got to go back, right? Which is what we were talking about, bailout nation. So you have George W. Bush then, great financial crisis. You got Hank Paulson as the Treasury Secretary. Okay, Goldman Sachs. Then you have the Obama administration come in, and you have Timothy Geithner, who was appointed to be the next Treasury Secretary. Well, he was there during all that chaos. He was behind the scenes in those backroom deals, making this stuff happen, all these bailouts happen. Timothy Geithner, president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank. And, of course, gets the nod from Barack Obama. Well, you must know what you're doing because you were there. Yeah, he knew what he was doing. He oversaw the great financial crisis. Didn't see it coming, but he knew how to bail out his buddies. Yeah. And through other conversations that we've had, citing various interviews, when Barack Obama came to office, it was hope and change. He's supposed to be this great new guy. Hope and change. His political analysts, political advisors, wanted President Obama to give the people some blood, meaning let these banks go bankrupt. Your hope and change, look at how these guys screwed over the country and the economy. We can't be bailing them out. Look at how they're affecting Main Street, and Main Street's paying the bill. Give the people some blood. And then you got Geithner. Geithner is there. And he must have scared the hell out of Obama. Because, of course, Obama didn't know any better. Can't do that, Mr. President. We just worked our tails off to save him. To give him hundreds of billions. Now we're in the trillions. Don't ever forget this. A decade ago, it was billions, hundreds of billions. Now it's trillions. Do not ever forget this. Okay? 2 things I just want you to remember. 96-0, no votes for America. And a decade ago, we were in billions. Now we're in trillions. Don't forget this. And Geithner says to Obama, no, we're doing the right thing. Continue with what we worked on during the latter days of the Bush administration. This is going to work. With what the fiscal authorities did in conjunction with what the monetary authorities are doing, this is going to work. Just don't give the people blood. And he took Geithner's advice because he probably told him, Mr. President, if you do that, we're going to end up in the Great Depression. And you don't want to be Herbert Hoover, do you? That's how they scared George W. Bush. Because according to George W. Bush, in that interview on that documentary I was citing last week in the podcast Bailout Nation, he said, when they came to me in the Oval Office and said, Mr. President, such and such bank is about to go bankrupt, according to Bush, he said, so what? That's their bad bets. That's their problem. Which was the right thing to say. It's the right thing to do. But you have Hank Paulson in there said, oh, no, Mr. President, can't do that. Scared him. Then you have Hank Paulson, in conjunction with Chairman of the Federal Reserve at the time, Ben Bernanke, going to members of Congress, scaring the hell out of them, too. This is well documented. Scaring the hell out of them. If you don't act, extorting Congress, meaning us, our tax dollars. If you don't give us money, hundreds of billions of dollars, just a made-up number, had to be big, but they were afraid to use trillion at the time. Now they use it like they're handing out candy. Just got to be a big number, 700 billion it was. We need it, otherwise we're headed for the Great Depression. Tomorrow the stock market's going to fall 1,000 points. The next day it's going to fall 2,000 points. You're not going to be able to go to the ATM or to a bank and get your money. Nobody's going to get paid. Just scared the hell out of them. And of course, it subsequently passed. Now, the first go around, that TARP bill did not, if you recall, but subsequently it did. Okay? Same song and dance is going on. So that's Hank Paulson, Goldman Sachs. That's Timothy Geithner, New York Federal Reserve Bank. Then you got Jack Lew, who replaces Timothy Geithner. Now, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, Jack Lew, what his background was in. So I looked them up before this podcast, just briefly. And I don't like doing this because it just upsets me when you play this game of connections. Who worked where, how they ended up over there. It's sickening. Again, no drainage of the swamp whatsoever. This dude was a lawyer. So now you know you're really getting screwed. Just like Jay Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, he's not an economist. He's a lawyer. So you know we're getting really screwed. So Jack Lew, lawyer, attorney, also the COO, Chief Operating Officer for Citigroup. During 2006, 2008. Oh, when was that? That's right, the great financial crisis. So this guy must be a genius too, because you got the CEO, the CFO, the COO. These are the top three dogs. He's there, Citigroup, 2006, 2008. Then he subsequently replaces Timothy Geithner. So only the best idiots for this country. Don't worry about it. He leaves, of course, because Donald Trump gets elected. Oh, now we got Mnuchin. Oh, another Goldman Sachs guy. Now we got President-elect Joe Biden, and he's talking about two idiots from the Federal Reserve, or the biggest banker this country may have ever seen. Heads, I win. Tails, you lose. Vaccine Monday. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I'm Alex Correitis. Godspeed.